This is Jack CARR, and you are listening to Son of a Blitch. So we're doing a podcast tonight.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yes.
All right, let's do this.
Let's do this. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Jack.
Of course.
And on behalf of everyone here, just want to thank you for your service to start off with. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Well, man, last time you were here, it was the middle of the writer's strike. And since then, you've put out a book. You got a nonfiction book, Targeted Beirut, coming out in September. You got the Terminalist prequel, Dark Wolf, and I assume you guys got season 2 that's in the works. It's been super busy, man. So congratulations first on all of that wonderful things. I wanted to jump into Red Sky Morning first off, and you bring Alice back in this book, talking about quantum computing, artificial intelligence, autonomous control, and I just wanted to know, what are your feelings about the government and other governments taking controls with quantum computing, and where do you feel like that's headed right now? And does that scare you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting time, obviously. So if you have an enemy that is developing quantum computers and artificial intelligence and also building next generation platforms that allow for autonomous control, and you're not, then they're getting an advantage just by the speed with which they can make decisions. And let's say that country is China. Let's say they launch missiles at the United States from submarines off the coast. Then those things can be they can be raining down on the United States before our generals are even out of bed. So that in turn means that we have to do that sort of thing. And we have to develop these technologies and these platforms that are at least have the capability for autonomous control. So in this, I created this character, Alice, 2 books ago for In the Blood, and that was before ChatGPT became like a part of the lexicon and part of our, I guess it's on our phones now apparently, as a couple of days ago, without even being able to like easily opt out of it. And so it wasn't really something that we were all thinking about. We knew it existed from films and science fiction and that sort of a thing, but it wasn't like a part of our everyday life yet. And then that book came out, and then the timing was good, so that was fantastic. And then I didn't want to, for the next book, for Only the Dead, I didn't want to rely on Alice, that character, to like save the day. So I sidelined her for the last book, because I didn't want it to be like for those of us who grew up in the 80s with Michael Knight in the kit car, kid, I need you. And then all of a sudden diving into the Trans Am and off they go. So I didn't want to rely on that as a clutch. So sidelined her for the last book. But once you introduce a character like that to a universe, you can't just forget about her. So she's back in this one, and she's also patterned her decision making off of a human, and that person is James Reese. And so as you get closer to the end, that'll come into play a bit.
Yes. You were talking about characters. In your last book, you developed a character based loosely off of Ethel Kennedy. And I was curious, is there anybody in this book that you had a basis of the character that you wrote off of that you've met in life or that inspired you?
Next question.
All right.
No,
fair
I'm
enough.
I'm just kidding. If you read the book, you should, by chapter, 2 and 3, you should have a very good idea of who that character is based off of in real life. Inspired by, how about that, in case there's any attorneys in here. Inspired by probably is the way to put it. And I change things. I mean, all these characters are created just like anything else in life. We make decisions and do things based off our past experience and whatever foundation that we've built up to that point in life. So same things with characters. They're not like a cut and paste from anybody in real life, but there are certainly, oh my goodness, I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of politicians and senior military leaders. They give me a lot to work with. I guess that's the best way to put it.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, in previous books, you've traveled and you've got some inspiration for some of the places that you've taken James Reese. And I was just curious, did you go to China at all for this? Because I get the feeling the more places you visit and you write about, there's more places you probably won't be going to in the future.
Yes, this is true. And I wanted really to get to China for this book, to Macau in particular. And I didn't know before I started doing the research that they make more there on gambling than we do in Vegas here. And I had a touch point, a connection with somebody in Vegas that owns also a casino there, and I thought I'd zip over in a plane that similar to the one that I described in the book. I keep forgetting that this book just came out yesterday, so if you haven't got to that part, I got to remember that about spoilers. Although it's not really too big of a spoiler, but so I thought I was going to zip over there, and then all these other things are coming up with scripts and just life in general and all sorts of things that I need to get done. And so I was kind of up against the clock. And then I saw an article about an Australian novelist who went to, I think, Macau or somewhere in China and got picked up and thrown in jail for something that they had written. And I was like, maybe I don't need to go to Macau. Maybe I'm good. I'm definitely not going now. But I was fortunate that I went to China back before I joined the military, traveling around. So I have been to Beijing, Shanghai, and I went to Taiwan as well back then. So it's a long time ago, but it's still in the memory banks there, and I still have photos and still remember what it felt like to be walking around. I still remember what Tiananmen Square was like, and remember the big pictures of Mao and all those things. So if you read the book and get to those parts that describe those areas, that's because it was. I mean, it's still semi-fresh in my mind after all these years because I was only there once, and it made an impact. So I try to do that as much as I can. I try to use places that I've already been if I can't go somewhere. And my idea at the beginning when I started is that I'd always go to one place for research and then choose as many other places as locations as I could that I'd already been to. But then. So for the first one, I'd been to Iraq and Afghanistan, so I was good there. For the second one, I hadn't been to Mozambique. I knew that was going to play a pivotal role in that story. So I went there, spent a couple of weeks on the ground and got to weave that flavor into True Believer. Savage Son, I went to Russia, to Kamchatka Peninsula, Russia. So I wanted to see what it was like out there. I'd been to Moscow before, once again, traveling around the world before I went in the military. So I'd been to Moscow before, but I hadn't been to kind of the eastern side of Russia. So I got to go over there. I don't think I'll go back though. After that was, I think I just made it in under the wire as far as some things I say in these books. So went there for that one, and then for the next one, COVID hit, so everything was kind of shut down for the Devil's Hand. Luckily, that one was more domestic, not totally, but mostly domestic based. So I chose places already that I'd already been for that one. And then the next one, In the Blood, I wanted to get to Israel, and I didn't get to go because it was just really harsh. COVID was still going on, and unless you were an Israeli citizen, even if you were an Israeli citizen, it was hard to get in and out of Israel during COVID. They locked it down pretty hard. So I didn't get to go over there, but I sent that one to a family over there that had 3 generations read the book. So I had somebody in their 30s, somebody in their 60s, and somebody in their 90s read it. And they all said that they couldn't believe that I hadn't been over there. So that was all done just with research, just online and books and articles and that sort of thing. So I haven't gotten to really go anywhere to do research. And for this one, same thing. But it's probably good because I might still be in China.
Well, I'm glad you didn't go for that. You mentioned a plane in this book. Actually on the cover too, you feature the Lake Buccaneer.
That's right.
And this was a plane that you read about in 1985 on I think it was Centrifuge.
That's right.
And the same day you picked up Rambo Part 2. That's and you said that day you wanted to feature this plane in a book, and that one day you also wanted to own one. So I was curious. You put James Reese behind the controls of the plane. Have you taken some pilot lessons, and are you any closer to owning a Lake Buccaneer?
No. And my wife's not here, so maybe I can answer this truthfully. No, just kidding. I read that book in the summer of 1985, read it in one day, absolutely loved it, and told myself that one day I'd include that plane in a novel that I'd write. So this was the natural one to include that plane in. So put it on the cover. The paperback edition of that book also had it on the cover back in 85. So I really wanted to get it on the cover of this book. So it's on the spine of this book, and then it's on the cover of the audio, the CDs or the audio graphic. So I wanted to fly in one before the book came out or before I wrote that section. But once again, trying to do research and travel didn't really work out. But I talked to somebody who has whose father loved this plane and has had multiple planes. I think they either bought the company or they have some affiliation with the company. They don't make the plane anymore. They make parts for it still. So I talked to him, sent the chapters to him. I did all my research first though, because you can get on YouTube and kind of really get walked through like pre-checks and all sorts of things. You can do a lot of research on YouTube for something like that. And I really felt like I could get in that plane and take that thing off with just the research that I did. but I know I really can't. And I shouldn't. How about that? I shouldn't. Or I can maybe take off. I couldn't land. Maybe I feel pretty confident that I could get airborne or skip along the water for a little bit. But I wanted to make sure that someone who loved that plane, because it's a really dedicated community to that platform. And so I wanted someone who loved that plane, has flown one before, to at least know that I put in the effort to get it right. So that's why it's described in such detail there. But I talked to a guy who I found him on Instagram and started following and just checking out the plane, and then sent him the chapters, and he checked it out and sent him back to me with a couple corrections on there. So it should be fairly accurate.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I wanted to ask you about your recent travels, of which there are many. I mean, you've been in Budapest, but the one I wanted to focus on real quick, and we'll jump into the Budapest time because that's obviously with Dark Wolf. But you were in Normandy for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and you had some of your kids there with you. And I just wanted to ask you about that experience. What was that like for you? I know that you had been there before, and that's the Best Defense Foundation that took all of these amazing, it was like 48 different veterans between, 100 or close to that age. And I just wanted to, hear about your experience with that, and if you can share that with everyone here.
Yeah, so I've known Donnie Edwards, who started the Best Defense Foundation for, I don't know, probably a little over a decade now or so. And he's a former NFL player. And his grandfather was at Pearl Harbor. So his grandfather passed along all these amazing lessons to him. He had so much respect for his grandfather. And then when he was in the NFL, he just started taking guys back to battlefields on which they fought, to just on his own dime, just doing it on his own. Pearl Harbor, Normandy in particular, also the Netherlands, I think, at some point. But then when he got out, he started the Best Defense Foundation to continue that mission. And it's like a full-time thing. It's amazing how much work that everybody puts into that. But I did the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor a couple years ago with my daughter. She was 15 at the time, and they hadn't had any younger people come and help out these veterans before. But just seeing her work with these veterans and how they just lit up talking to someone from her generation about the things that they experienced in World War II was added so much value to the trip for them and to my daughter. But for them in particular, they just loved talking to her. So they allowed her to come back for the 78th anniversary of D-Day, and we did that, and really helping these guys getting out of their wheelchairs, getting them to the events, making sure they're taking their medicines, making sure they're eating, all those things. So you're really, it's a lot of work, and it's so fulfilling. So we did that, and then went back again here for the 80th, and they're all creeping up on 100, at 100, or over 100 years old. And it's not just one day back there. It's not just June 6th. It's at least 2 weeks of events. So we were there for 2 weeks, but it starts in Atlanta first. So everybody gathers there, and Delta flies everyone out, lands in Normandy, and they land a big aircraft out there. And it's not a normal flight. They usually just go to Paris, and then you have to drive up or take a train up from there. But they went out, surveyed the runway, and they brought one of these big jets in with these guys all in first class. And they had a great couple weeks out there, and it's just a very powerful experience. But from an American's perspective, in northern France in June, there's such a feeling of patriotism for the United States there. And there's American flags everywhere, 101st Airborne flags everywhere, 82nd Airborne flags everywhere. So it's really cool to be there during that time and see this outpouring of gratitude and support that's now multi-generational, because it's not just from the older people. They have passed it down, and it's not something they just talk about once a week in or once a year in school or something like that. I think they talk about it every single day, because the youngest kid up to the oldest person, they all have that same look on their face, and they're all just so proud and want to just talk to these guys, want to get their autographs. We make these baseball cards that have their stats on them and what they looked like in World War II, what they look like now, what they did during the war. And they're handing these things out as we're pushing them through the streets in these parades. Everyone's dressed up in World War II era clothing with World War II era Jeeps and Harleys and Indian motorcycles. And it's just an amazing thing to experience. And I think I saw more American flags in Normandy than I've ever seen in America on the 4th of July anywhere that I've been in my life. So it's a very interesting thing to experience, but that's because they were occupied.
Sure.
And then they were liberated. And these kids that liberated them, and they essentially were, some of them lied about their age, 15 years old. And I think we have a misconception about what they looked like, because we see Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan, and maybe Tom Hanks was like 45 maybe when he filmed that or something. And then John Wayne in The Longest Day, who was up there as well. But then you think about these guys that are storming the beaches of Normandy, or jumping out with the 101st Airborne, or landing gliders with 82nd. And they were like 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. They were young. They were very young.
Well, I wanted to bring it back to your time when you were in Budapest, Hungary. You guys have been filming Terminalist, Dark Wolf. Why don't you kind of catch us all up? When might we be seeing that air? I know you had the director's cut of the first episode that you guys got to go check out recently. I heard you talking about that. So yeah, if you can just maybe kind of, catch us up with what the plans are with that right now.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. We don't have a date that it's coming out, but I would expect that we finish it up in the next month or so. It goes into post-production, so I would expect it sometime in 2025. But there's no date or anything yet. But yeah, filming in Budapest, amazing city over there. Once again, went over there before I joined the military, so it's been a while, been a moon or two since had been back, but it's so interesting. There are Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bentleys, Porsches are a dime a dozen, Mercedes a dime a dozen. It's incredible how much wealth is I don't know if it's from there or if it's coming in there, but there's certainly a lot of Russian money, Ukrainian money, Chinese money there. And by Ukrainian money, probably some of ours. That's just kind of getting some really nice cars over there. So it might make an appearance in a future novel. There's just too much going on in Budapest right now not to include in a book. It's such a fascinating place. So it might make it into a future novel. But yeah, filming there now, everybody's crushing it. There is, I feel there's a lot more trust from senior level executives at Amazon this time around because they saw the data last time. And so that means you built up a little political capital, build up some trust. So there's not as many questions coming down this time as there were last time. There were a lot of questions last time. So there's almost zero this time. It's been fantastic. So much more freedom in these scripts. But it's interesting filming overseas. And I was always very forgiving about things that I saw, whether it's like military or something that I may know about law enforcement or weapons handling, whatever it might be. Very forgiving when I'd watch something. And I always try to just enjoy it for what it was. And now I have even more appreciation, more forgiveness for things that I see that are a little bit off because it's so hard to film anything good, certainly, because there's so many opportunities for it to go off the road, but or off the rails. But it's just getting weapons that you need in a country like that. You have to have like 6 months ahead of time. You're filling out ATF forms and import forms and all this stuff. So if you want to make a change to something because you have a better idea, but that would have been a good idea 6 months ago, so we could have got this thing into the country. And so there's just things like that you don't really account for if you're in the audience and don't know some of the intricacies. So always been forgiving, but now I'm even more forgiving when I see a show.
Well, in that show, too, you kind of talked about the first time through filming Terminalist and kind of leading up to that, too. You were kind of new to that role in that film adaptation. And now you're a part of casting. You're a part of writing. What is kind of your role in your day to day when you're on set there?
Yeah, when I'm on set there, I catch so much. So I wish if I didn't have anything else to do, I'd be on set every single day. So as an executive producer, you really add value where you can. And so for me, it's really throughout. It's all of it. But being there on set, you get to have like a strategic level view of what's going on if you're not there every single day. So that's I think that's what I add when I show up, is that I can look at it and add value through what I'm seeing, because I'm not intimately involved with it on a day-to-day basis now that they're in Budapest and I'm on book tour and doing all these other things. But yeah, you're just in there with the EP team. So it's me, David DiGilio, Max Adams, former Army Ranger, Jared Shaw, the guy who gave the book to Chris Pratt, and Taylor Kitsch. Like that's the kind of the group that is there every single day. And then Chris is in and out to film his scenes. So he gives his input when he's there and that sort of a thing. But and the director, Frederick Toy, who did Shogun. If anybody's seen Shogun, he did episode 3 or 4. Anyway, amazing guy. So we have a great crew. I feel extremely fortunate that we have such a good group of guys.
And what's the rollout looking like for the Terminalist as far as season 2 and beyond? Are you looking to do each season based on a book, or is there going to be kind of a culmination, or is there going to be some writing and some expansion of maybe outside of the book and outside the realm of that kind of, as far as the chapters of things?
Yeah, we'll see. But right now it's this prequel origin story, and we'll see if it goes for more than one season. You never know. But then we roll right into True Believer, so we roll right into writing that and then filming that probably sometime in early 2025. We'll see. But nice. Get to work on that one, and then who knows? We'll see where it goes from there. Probably all depends on what Chris wants to do. That's
fair. Yeah, he's a busy man. Well, you also have Targeted Beirut, which is your first nonfiction. It's going to be coming out in a few months. You linked up with James Scott there, who's had a lot of historical books under his belt. I was just kind of curious, how did you guys come to meet and decide that you wanted to do this first book in a series of which, you said maybe every other year you want to put something out. Yeah. How did you guys kind of come together with that?
Yeah, so I wanted to do just looking at the space in general. You look at what Tom Clancy did in the 80s. He has his books coming out. You never knew when was coming out. Maybe it was every year, maybe it was every year and a half, maybe even 2 years, maybe even 2.5 years. And then in the early 90s, he starts doing nonfiction. He starts doing some other things as well with video games and other co-written thrillers. But so I always, growing up, I was well aware of that and always considered that an option. So wanted to do a nonfiction series that looked at different terrorist events and really tried to keep those lessons alive from those events for future generations so that they don't have to learn the same lessons in blood. And 1983, Beirut barracks bombing, the Marines lost more people in a single day than they'd lost since Iwo Jima in World War II. And for me, it was a very seminal event because I'm a kid. I'm around 9-10 years old. And I know I want to join the military later in life. And I'm seeing these Time magazine cover come across my parents' or our dining room table. Newsweek, I'm seeing the news on television at 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock at night, newspapers. And so you're seeing this devastation over there. And so you're aware that there was this terrorist attack. And it was really, there were some things that led up to it. So there was an embassy bombing in April. And then you have the administration talking about the Marines over there being peacekeepers all the way up through October and past. But they were in combat. Those guys, now that I've done all this research, they were 100% in combat. So it's very interesting to see administration talking points coming out in the spring, summer, fall of 1983, and when those guys were in actual combat. So always something that I always wanted to do, and so I pitched it to Simon & Schuster, and they said, yes, let's do it. And then I thought, well, who do I want to work with this on? And there was only one person, James Scott. So I reached out to him and asked him, and he was fired up to do it. So that's how it went. He has 5 books out, 4 on World War II, and one not on World War II. But amazing guy, and he knows how to do all that, like annotate everything legally. For those that have not having experience in the nonfiction space, you really have to know what you're doing when you're annotating different quotes and sources and all that stuff. Because if you mess something up in one of these books that I write here, you can just say, "Oh, it's fiction," it's okay. But there's none of that for the nonfiction space. You really have to have that right, have that down, and he's so good at it and such a great guy. So that comes out September 24th.
Nice. Yeah. You also in this recent book, you talked about a typewriter and you actually own one of Hemingway's typewriters. I was curious, how did you come to get that?
Yeah, it's a bit of classified because the person asked me to never to say who they were, but it was gifted to me in early 2020. So right before COVID, there was a guy, A.E. Hochter. I think I'm pronouncing his name semi-right. But he also co-founded Newman's Own with Paul Newman. So he was this guy, kind of a mover and a shaker, a manager-ish type person in that crowd back in the day. And so he got Hemingway a typewriter to write A Movable Feast on. And he passed away, I think, in late 2021. And then all his memorabilia, all the things he's collected over the years went up for auction, including this typewriter. And a reader saw it and wanted to get it for me. So it's now, it's in our house, and I got it and I typed one Hemingway sentence on there and then let it just sit. Of course, the kids have walked by and gone like, it's like, oh God, but that's just how it goes.
Nice.
I think Hemingway would approve.
Of course. Well, I wanted to open it up to the audience to have some question answering before we get to the photography. I have a microphone set up over here. I have it turned off right now. So if anybody wants to come step up to it, just flip that towards you, the switch on top, and don't be bashful. Come on.
Oh, wow. You got to walk all the way up there? That's intimidating.
Yeah.
Jeez.
If it's too hard to walk up there, you can shout it out and we'll interpret
and
it up here.
I can repeat it. Yeah. All right. Somebody's out. Somebody's at the mic.
So you came pretty hot out the gate once you retired from the Navy with your first book. My question is, how did you, well, I'm assuming you were writing while you were still in.
Well, last year and a half, when I didn't really have any responsibilities other than getting out of said bureaucracy.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you divide up Navy time, family time, writing time, to be able to do what you did, right after you retired, to where it's just boom, 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 everything hit?
Well, it was actually easier when I was still in the military because there was nothing else other than family. There wasn't, in that last year, for those who have been in the military and tried to get out of it, it takes a little time to go and do all your medical, do all your dental, get read out of all these different secret programs, turn in gear. And then they have these like, I don't know, transition assistance program or something like that. And, so which was totally useless. And so but you have to like you can't just like go to these things. You also have to stand in line first to make your appointment. Maybe not now. Maybe there's an app now or something. Probably not. But it's you stand in line. So you have a lot of time on your hands, and you go in a different pile. So once I dropped my papers, at least my experience was, drop your papers, you kind of go in this different pile, and you have to do all these things to get out. And I think the command's actually like responsible to make sure that you do all that stuff. So they just kind of want to make sure you do it. So that was time. So I just took advantage of it and started writing. So I started writing December of 2014 was when I wrote the first words to the Terminal List. And also when I chose Chris Pratt and Antoine Fuqua, even though I didn't know them and had no connections to Hollywood or publishing. But I didn't really worry about any of that other stuff. There was nothing really to worry about. There was no one to try to reach out to or think about reaching out to in publishing or anything like that because I didn't know anyone. So it was all really about the book. And then I wasn't taking guys down range anymore, so that wasn't weighing heavily on me. I didn't feel like I needed to spend every waking second studying the enemy, studying insurgencies, counterinsurgencies, terrorism, be training all the time, even on my own time. So I just felt like I could start doing something different. And so that was writing and family, because there was nothing else back then. And then, I got it to Simon & Schuster, and luckily they loved it, and off we went to the races. So it's, I don't know how else. Yeah, I got very fortunate. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Next up.
Huge fan, obviously.
Oh, thank you.
Just finished the book. The thing's the best one yet.
Thank you.
Totally amazing.
Thank you.
And so you have an amazing ability to.
You read it in one day? Did you get it early?
And so I got it yesterday.
Got it yesterday. Dang,
So,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
wow. So
Nice. Yeah. Give it up. Nice.
Coffee.
yeah,
Nice.
glad you included the Flux Raider.
Nice.
All the cool kids have them.
Yeah.
And but you have an amazing ability to tell the future. So like the thing.
I hope I'm not telling the future in this one.
So
I really hope.
That's kind of my, so like the Ukraine thing, the Israel thing, like I remember whenever like the Ukraine thing happened, I was like, I just read about that like in a book,
Crazy.
And so how are you able to do that? Yeah. What's your
Trade secrets, my friend. Trade secrets. No. Well, a couple of them aren't really that difficult to predict, like the Ukrainian invasion or Russian invasion of Ukraine. Just if you read Peter Zion, he predicted that in 2014 down to the year, and because he's looking at population decline, and what he looked at for that in particular was when is the last time that Russia can field an army at its current size? When does that start to decline because of population, because of the demographics? And so he predicted that to the year, and so I incorporated that one in there, and then some other things. COVID just happened to be randomly writing a book about what the enemy has learned from watching us on the field of battle for the last 20 years, and I was using a bioweapon as part of that, and then COVID hit, which was kind of wild. And because I'm also writing really about what the enemy's learned about us, well, we move into a summer of civil unrest and then a very contentious election cycle. And so once again, the enemy is looking at all of that. And by enemy, I mean China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, superpowered individuals, terrorist organizations. So they're all learning something and taking notes and figuring out what they can do, what can they exploit, and how they can divide us further. One of those old quotes, I forget who said it, but don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake, type of a thing. So that was my takeaway from writing that book, was like, geez, man, all they need to really do is step back and kind of watch us. We're doing a pretty good job of destroying ourselves from the inside right now, unfortunately. So, but I like to remain hopeful. I try to remain hopeful. So then came In the Blood, no. So So I don't know about it's just I look at past experience, all the things that I studied throughout my life, warfare, and then all the reading that I've done all my life, not on the warfare side or the nonfiction side, but the fiction side, and reading the masters like Tom Clancy and Nelson DeMille and AJ Quinnell and J.C. Pollock and Mark Olden, David Morrell, Louis L'Amour, all these guys really my professors in the art of storytelling, and then combining those things together as I got out of the military allowed me to create James Reese in this universe. So that's a very long way of me saying that once again the dynamics currently at play in the world right now give me a lot to work with, and having that background allows me to make some projections here and there, mostly by putting myself in the enemy's shoes. Yeah. Thank you. And that Flux Raider, that thing I saw, first time I saw that was like 5 years ago, and I was like, who's going to use this thing? I didn't quite get it. And then I started talking to some people that actually use them and so then that's why I made it into the book. So it's a pretty cool little deal. Yeah.
Next question.
So I kind of just wanted to change topics a little bit and ask more of a question about you. And like I've listened to your podcast and like a bunch of different things, and I feel like you take a lot of inspiration for a lot of your characters from people you know. We kind of talked about that earlier. Is there anything like James Reese and oh my god, I just forgot his name. Rafe. Yes, are huge hunters in the backcountry, Montana. Yeah. Is there any truth to that as far as you go? Like, do you love to hunt and fish, and what's your favorite type of hunting?
Yeah. So, yes, on all. But I wanted to differentiate the two because I knew they were going to be in the military about the same time. They're both going to be SEALs. How can I differentiate these characters enough from one another where you really do have a difference? And so I made Rafe just a tiny tad bit older, not by much, like just a year older, but a background with a family coming from Rhodesia. So I really wanted to do that because I hadn't seen that done before. And growing up, who else here considers the 80s their formative years? Anybody? Nice. Awesome. I like it. Who perused a Soldier of Fortune magazine back in the day? Yeah, nice. Same hands. Awesome. So growing up, going through that magazine, you're reading about this place called Rhodesia and like, what's going on over there? You're seeing these guys in like UDT shorts and, combat boots with FNFALs with this crazy camouflage pattern on there. You're not really sure exactly what's going on if you're reading that in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. But you see that like, wow, these weapons are pretty cool. And so I knew I wanted to incorporate that into a novel because it's not something that we as Americans we don't really read about it in popular culture. I think Blood Diamond was the first time we really had a movie that something from popular culture that focused on that area, or character with a background in that area. So I wanted to do that, but wanted to make Rafe have a connection there, and so I do that through the gear. Obviously, his family, a little bit of an accent, and some of his mindset that comes from what happened to his family over there and what happened to the country over there. But also through the gear. So with the Courtney boots and with essentially leather holsters instead of Kydex, and a 1911 that has a history to it that's been passed down through the generations. So I try to use all those things to differentiate these characters and give them interesting backstories as well. So, and then the hunting piece is something that bonds those guys together because really from the beginning of time, that's something that's primal and it's visceral and it's something that all of our ancestors had to be good at. Otherwise we wouldn't be here today. So I try to key into that. And in each book, there's some element of fire somewhere. And I do that because the first stories were essentially told around those fires and they had lessons in them, whether they were just stories about what actually happened or they were stories that were, that we had these real elements, but were fictionalized so you could remember them. So you could pass down these lessons of warfare and of the hunt. So I thought that was an important thing to tap into creating these characters. And yes, so I haven't been hunting for a little bit. Well, I guess I did go over to Hawaii, but it's not really the same kind of hunting. You're hunting out of the Four Seasons on Lanai, which is a little different. But in Mozambique, certainly. I mean, I love the different hunting traditions around the world as well, because even every country in Europe has a slightly different one. So I want to spend some more time over there doing that. But I've been to Africa many times, and of course in the United States and the Western mountains, elk and moose and that sort of thing. So. Elk hunting's, but this is my favorite, but I feel like maybe I should temper my answers. But I hadn't really done any predator hunting up until I did the research for Savage Sun in Kamchatka Peninsula, and there was something about going out after something that can tear you up and eat you there was a draw there. I didn't really expect it because I hadn't done that sort of hunting in my past. So there was something different about it, and I don't know what it was, but there was some sort of a connection there.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I'm canceled.
We'll hire you.
So you stated that you're a really big James Bond fan, and even there's some 007 Easter eggs in this one. What are some of your favorite James Bond moments or movies that inspired James Reese in this book and beyond?
Yeah, good question. So it was the 007th book, so I figured this was the time to go down to GoldenEye in Jamaica, where Ian Fleming wrote all of the Bond books down there. So I went down there last summer and used it as an excuse to get down there, and then got to go sit at his desk where he wrote all those books and open up the big windows there that overlook this lawn and then this cliff that drops down to his private beach and then the ocean beyond. So it was just such an incredible experience to be there in that place. For me, it was just a magical experience, and having been a fan of his from the earliest age and from as a kid. So, because it wasn't just James Bond movie or whatever. It was always Ian Fleming's James Bond. And that was really cool to see that as a kid. Well, who's this Ian Fleming guy? And I can ask my dad back then and, get a little bit, but there wasn't something you can just type it into a machine and get a lot of stuff back. There were a couple books back then that we had, some books I got from the library about Ian Fleming. There was one book that went through all the Bond book on movies up to that point, whenever that was in the early 80s that I was looking at that stuff. So yeah, it was a important part of my childhood, I think. I watched those movies over and over and over again, and then read the books a little bit later. But it's always been so having it be a part of my life from that early age, knowing I wanted to write one day, it's just a part of my experience. So this one was the time to incorporate some Easter eggs in there, I guess you call them, but references, I guess, is something is probably more accurate. And there's something in there for the most casual viewer of like a Bond film, and then there are things that even the most ardent Bond fan won't recognize. I think there's a couple that I'll get because I morphed it enough where it's just like a hint of something. So there's something in there for everybody if they're a Bond fan. So there's quite a few of them in here. So it's the 007th book, so there's that, and then it's also the 40th anniversary of the Hunt for Red October this year. So that's why it starts out with a Clancy-esque type prologue with submarines that started turning into a whole book, and it's probably one of the reasons this book, we're here in June instead of May when the book was supposed to come out, because I know nothing about submarines. I know something now. I didn't know something at the beginning. So I took a lot of research, and I did take a little literary license there for those who have spent some time in subs. But yeah, it was fun to write, and some of my favorite Bond moments or films. I mean, there's something about all of them. I don't look at them with a critical eye. I try to enjoy them. I try to enjoy everything that I read or everything that I watch. So I try to be too critical of them. So I like some of the early stuff. Of course, Goldfinger was probably, for me as a kid, was the one I watched the most, and then Thunderball, because I knew I wanted to be a SEAL from such an early age, so it has those scenes in there. But I think now I have a greater appreciation for From Russia with Love and Dr. No. And I always liked You Only Live Twice, because as we mentioned, I'm growing up in the 80s, and it's the ninja craze time. So You Only Live Twice is, I think I have 2 references to You Only Live Twice in this book. So I think I wove two in, but I love that growing up as well. So yeah, I love it all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I do have a little something here. I forgot one thing. So no one's asking me, but if they did ask me about what to do next with the Bond franchise, I think they should go back and do the books, but do them as period pieces. So you do Casino Royale, but you do it in the 50s. And for those who have read the book, they know that James Bond drove an old Bentley in that one. He didn't drive an Aston Martin. He drove this Bentley back then from 1937, I think it was. So you do them as period pieces. So end of World War II, you have the British Empire in decline, and then you have the creation, James Bond. So I think they should go back and do the books, but do them as truer adaptation period pieces in order to save the franchise after what they did at the end of the last one. But I won't spoil that for anyone who hasn't seen it. So, all right. What else do we have? And before I get to this last piece, place. I just want to say that thank you so much for being here. I sincerely appreciate it. This is my favorite part of doing this, is being able to say thank you. I can try to say thank you as much as I possibly can online. I try to hit that little heart button and thank people that reach out and say that they watched the show and liked it, or listened to the podcast and liked it, or read the books, or shared them with their dad and now they talked about them or whatever. I just like to thank them online, but it's different where I get to shake your hand here and look into people's eyes and thank you in person, because it means the world to me and it allows me to do what I love to do, which is write. So thank you all so much. And then also, right now, sun is going down here. It means it's coming up on another side of the world. So I always like to think about those people that are out there on front lines, even though there's not Iraq and Afghanistan, or not in the same way that it used to be anyway. But there are men and women out there that are doing some jobs in some austere places, and just like to remember that they're out there doing that. Well, it allows us to be here doing this. So thank you all so much. Appreciate everything. And I got one more
Thank you,
thing.
Jack.